Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. I want to take a moment to thank you, yes, you, for your incredible support during these past few weeks. Your messages, your emails, after my more vulnerable episodes, have touched me deeply. I felt so held by this community in ways I never expected, and I'm profoundly grateful. For those wondering how I'm doing, the heaviness has lifted. I've stabilized, I'm feeling hopeful, and I'm genuinely excited about continuing to create value for this community. The light is way more present, and that fills me with relief and such gratitude. I'm sharing this not because my personal journey is uniquely important, but because I believe our stories illuminate each other. When we witness somebody else's struggle and growth, we often see reflections of our own potential. So while I draw from my experience, today this conversation is really about us, about reclaiming the fullness of who we are. Welcome to the Lulu Essey podcast, where we do things differently. There is no polishing, no edit, just real, raw, honest conversations that offer you practical tools to transform your life from the inside out. Today we're exploring a question that's been circling in my mind. Who are we beyond our job titles? What happens to our sense of worth when our professional identity shifts? Whether through job loss, retirement, taking time to raise children, or choosing an unconventional path. While identity is vast, and we could explore it for months, today we're focusing specifically on how we relate to professional identity and its impact on our mental fitness. Because the resilience to know and love ourselves beyond what we do for a living might be one of the most essential aspects of mental fitness in today's world. In today's episode, I'm introducing an original framework I've developed called the Whole Identity Framework. This is something I've been refining through both my personal experience and work with my clients, who are also finding their way through professional transitions. It's a practical approach to building identity resilience that you won't find anywhere else, and I'm so excited to share it with you today for the first time. Have you ever noticed the strange paradox we live in? We say things like, we're more than our jobs, and work isn't everything. Yet our society behaves in exactly the opposite way. When we meet someone new, what's often the first question we ask? So what do you do? As if the answer will tell us everything we think we need to know about who they really are. Or maybe it's just a little lazy. A way to start a conversation without the risk of forming a real human connection. I've been reflecting on this deeply these past few weeks. As of the 16th of May 2025, I have now left my full-time role as an executive creative director after a restructuring. For years, that title became shorthand for my value, not just to others, but to myself. It was a convenient package that communicated my worth without having to explain further. And I even had SVP before the title. So how's that for a banger? It gave me status, respect, and a comfortable identity I could slip into. But it also created an unhealthy attachment. A few years ago already, I began to look at and examine how much of my self-worth, my self-love was wrapped up in that professional identity, and how much I relied on it to feel enough. Let's probe a little. Have you ever asked yourself who you are without your job title? How much of your self-worth and value is attached to work accomplishments? What would happen to your sense of self if your professional identity suddenly changed or got taken away completely? These are not comfortable questions, but they're essential ones for our mental fitness. Because when we build our identity primarily on professional roles that can change in an instant, we are creating a very fragile and unstable foundation. And this is not how we build emotional resilience. There's really interesting neuroscience behind our attachment to professional identity. Our brains process social status threats like job loss or demotion in the same regions that process physical pain. That explains why professional transitions can so genuinely feel painful. Beyond just the practical concerns, like how the hell am I going to support myself now? When we receive recognition and achievement at work, our brains release dopamine, the same reward chemical released by addictive substances. Neuroscientist Dr. Robert Sapolsky from Stanford has extensively studied this phenomenon. His research shows that professional achievements trigger the same dopamine pathways as other rewards, creating what he calls status reward loops that can become as strong as any addiction. We literally become neurologically wired for and attached to the validation and professional identities that our jobs provide. Now that is wild, but it is very important to realize that if we want to improve our mental fitness and not be like the proverbial hamster on a wheel, something has to change. Over time, as we repeatedly define ourselves through work, we strengthen these neural pathways until our professional identity feels inseparable from our core self. The brain does not distinguish between I work as a teacher and I am a teacher. The identity becomes embedded. It literally takes root, and those roots are strong. In fact, a 2022 study in Nature Neuroscience found that professional rejection activates the same brain circuits as physical injury. That's how deeply wired we are to equate identity with work. But here's the hopeful part of all of this. The same neuroplasticity that created this attachment gives us the ability to reshape it. We can literally rewire our brains to recognize our worth beyond professional achievement. Some of the most profound wisdom about identity comes from people who exist outside traditional professional structures. People society often overlooks in conversations about success. Stay-at-home parents, for instance, navigate an identity journey that's rarely acknowledged. Their work, arguably the most important work of shaping human beings, doesn't come with titles, promotions, or public recognition. Many face the subtle and not so subtle judgment implicit in questions like, But what did you do before? Or when will you go back to work? As if raising humans isn't work that shapes our entire future. Yet those who embrace this role often develop a profound understanding of value beyond external validation. They learn to measure success in moments of connection and growth that aren't quantifiable on a resume. And at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that I have met and know stay-at-home parents who feel profound shame without a so-called real job. Young people still defining their path have wisdom too, particularly those questioning the traditional routes to success. They remind us that identity is exploration and not a fixed state. It can change and morph, and that is so liberating. They don't buy into the same narrative of my generation, when you chose a profession and that's it, decided for good. Many of these young people are asking, how can I find my worth before professional establishment? What if my path doesn't fit conventional characters? These questions reflect courage, not confusion, and I admire their courage. And retirees, those who've moved beyond their professional identities, offer perhaps the most valuable perspective. Many speak of an initial identity crisis, followed by a profound discovery that who they are transcends what they did for decades. They learn to recalibrate self-worth beyond productivity and develop legacy perspectives that make professional achievements seem much smaller in the grand scheme of life. So much of our self-worth is sadly attached to our productivity. The wisdom of retirees particularly is valuable for those of us navigating career transitions, as they have already journeyed through one of life's most significant identity shifts and emerged with deeper perspective. What if we didn't wait for retirement or major life transitions to develop this wisdom? What if we could build identity resilience now? This is where I want to introduce what I'm calling the whole identity framework. It's a simple way to think about expanding our identity beyond professional roles. Each letter represents an aspect of identity resilience we can cultivate. Let's break this down letter by letter, because each one is a pillar for reclaiming identity beyond work. We start with W. Worth comes from within, not external validation. This is foundational. When we recognize our inherent worth, regardless of title or achievement, we create an unshakable core that no professional transition can threaten. This isn't about diminishing accomplishments, but it's about understanding they're expressions of our worth, not the source of it. And I really want you to hear me on this. Accomplishments and accolades are an expression of our worth, but they are not where our worth comes from in the first place. A simple practice here is daily self-acknowledgement that has nothing to do with achievement. Completing the sentence, I value myself today because of who I am, not what I've done. And identifying specific qualities, not accomplishments, that make this true. Moving on to H. Humanity connects us beyond titles and achievements. Our shared human experiences transcend professional boundaries. When we connect through our humanity, our fears, hopes, joys, struggles, our dreams and disappointments, we access a level of belonging that job titles can never provide. Try having one conversation this week where you don't mention work at all. Instead, connect through shared experiences, passions, or curiosity, and notice how different that connection feels. Then openness to multiple identity sources creates resilience. When we invest our identity in multiple areas, relationships, community involvement, creative expression, personal growth, spiritual practice, whatever matters to you, we create stability. Like a table with many legs instead of just one, we remain standing when one identity source shifts. Take stock of where your identity comes from. Where else beyond work do you find meaning and definition? Where could you invest more of yourself to create a better balance? And legacy is about impact, not possession. What if we reframed contribution beyond job description? The ripple effect of how we show up in the world, the kindness, integrity, and presence we bring to each interaction creates a legacy far more significant than any professional title or award. Try this. At the end of the day, reflect on one moment when you've made a positive impact that had nothing to do with your professional role. These moments compound over time, and they bring beauty and grace into our world. This is a powerful way of effecting positive change in our world. Lastly, engagement with life beyond work expands identity. Fuller expression of self comes through broader engagement with life. There is so much joy and purpose waiting for us outside the confines of our professional circles. In nature, in our relationships, learning, play, service, and countless other dimensions. The practice here is intentional, non-work engagement. Schedule time, even just 15 minutes, for something that engages you completely and has no connection to professional advancement and productivity. And remember, leave productivity out of this practice. It does not belong here. This framework isn't about diminishing professional accomplishment or suggesting work isn't important. It's about creating balance and resilience so that your sense of self remains intact and remains strong and grounded through life's inevitable transitions. So just to recap the whole identity framework, let me remind you, worth comes from within. Humanity connects us. Openness creates resilience. Legacy is about impact, and engagement expands who we are. You don't need to master all 5. Just pick one and start. One of the most powerful ways we can help each other develop this resilience is by changing how we initiate connections. What if instead of asking, "What do you do?" we asked questions that invite more curiosity and the opportunity for a real human connection? Questions like, "What do you do for fun? What are you curious about right now? What matters most to you at this point in your life? What's something you've learned recently that blew you away? Have you recently read a book, seen a movie, been to a show that you'd recommend? These questions create space for people to share what truly lights them up, rather than defaulting to professional packaging. They invite honest, meaningful connection rather than categorization. And remember, you can be playful with it. Ask bizarre questions if that is your thing. Keep it interesting. It takes courage to be seen fully, to step beyond our professional identities and show all aspects of ourselves. There is vulnerability in saying, I am more than what I do for a living, in a world that often measures worth by productivity and position. As I step into this new chapter, beyond my role as Executive Creative Director, I'm both terrified and I'm exhilarated. I'm rediscovering parts that were always overshadowed by professional identity. This career transition has become an unexpected gift, inviting me to reclaim dimensions of my identity that had been overshadowed by my professional role. I'm relearning how to answer the question, what do you do? Without defaulting to a title or accomplishment. It's messy and uncomfortable at times, but there's extraordinary freedom in this exploration. I will always be a creative director and will continue to freelance in that world, but I'm also so much more. And besides, now I have more time to serve you and build this beautiful community. And I believe developing this kind of identity resilience is essential for mental fitness and finding a way through this world which seems to be changing so quickly. Beautiful people, as I close today's conversation, I invite you to begin your exploration beyond work, not because professional identity isn't valuable. It absolutely is, but because confining ourselves to any single dimension of identity creates unnecessary vulnerability in our mental fitness. You are a magnificent, multi-dimensional being whose worth cannot be captured in a job description, no matter how impressive. Your humanity is too vast, too rich, too meaningful to be reduced to what you do for a living. And remembering this truth is perhaps one of the most powerful mental fitness practices we can develop. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll recognize that the whole framework practices fit perfectly with the tiny promises we've discussed in previous episodes. Remember, transformation happens through small, consistent actions. Making a tiny promise to yourself to practice just one element of this framework each day, you can gradually reshape your relationship with identity in meaningful ways. It's those micro deposits that build the mental fitness we need when life inevitably shifts. Please share this episode with someone who might be questioning their worth. Perhaps someone in a career transition, a stay-at-home parent who doesn't feel seen, or a young person still defining their path, or someone approaching retirement. And if this episode spoke to you, you will love the practical tools I share between episodes. Come find me on YouTube or Instagram, especially if you're craving reminders that who you are is already enough. And as always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, with hope, compassion, and belief in your magnificent wholeness beyond any title, this comes straight from my heart to yours.